I'd love to just get your take on last night's game because that's such a cool topic. It just reminded me a lot of some of the great moments in World Series history. So we'll call you right back. And my partner's name is Ed Brown, and he'll be the one. Edward, sorry. He has a thing about being called. Yeah, he has a thing about being called Ed. Yeah, all right. Call you right back, Ted. Thanks, man.
Yeah, we had Ted on.
We made him on earlier.
Yeah, we had him on before.
Good. He's a good guy. So you can do 2 segments.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. There we go.
Ted?
Hey, Ted.
Hello.
There we go.
Hey, it's Edward Brown and Bruce McGowan. How are you?
All right.
Good. Thanks again
Thank you
for
for changing my thing there. Okay, I'm on my earpiece. So good. I'm with you guys.
Nice.
Excellent. Okay, so we do just a very quick 2-minute introduction. So stay with us. I'll start that right now.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. You know our show. It's where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, longtime sports radio personality. Today's show is going to be fun because we have a guest we haven't had on for, over a year.
Yeah, a good guy and a fellow who has been doing play-by-play for the NFL, for Major League Baseball, NBA. Ted Robinson, nationally known voice, who also covers professional tennis. So we're going to get into a number of topics with Ted.
Excellent.
Yeah.
With the Cubs winning the World Series.
Yeah.
Ever since the zipper was invented, that's quite a feat.
Quite a story.
All right. At each commercial break, we're going to ask a sports trivia question. Today's theme is going to be baseball records. Some of these will be kind of easy. A couple might be kind of hard. We'll see if you guys can know it.
All right.
And you can listen to Sports Econ 101 on iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Sports Byline USA, CRN, and all other kind of. What are we on? About 250 stations, something like that? Around the country?
Armed Forces Radio Network.
Armed Forces Radio. Don't forget about those guys.
Yeah, those guys over in Afghanistan. I guess there's a few left in Afghanistan, right?
I guess so, yeah. But that's why we have to have hard breaks. That's why it's tough.
Yeah.
Ted's on the phone,
That's right.
so we're going to have to
Okay.
say, Ted, I got to go to a break.
All right.
All right.
Speaking of Ted, we're going to get to him right away.
Right away. Okay,
Yeah.
so this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments that are still currently yielding around 8%, a little bit less right now, it's about 7.8%. Secured by real estate, mostly in the California Bay Area, and it doesn't get any more conservative than that. You got to check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. And by the way, this is kind of embarrassing, I got to admit it, but we had a show that we had to go to last night, and my Uverse on AT&T stopped working. So I literally had to, before the show, I had to have my phone give me updates as to what was going on in the World Series.
Oh, there you go.
Did the Cubs win?
But we'll find out in a minute. We'll find out in a minute.
Oh man, I had to watch highlights, but
Keep you in
it's
suspense.
nothing like watching the whole game by itself.
Yeah.
All right, so don't touch that dial. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back with Ted Robinson. All right, so that's our little interlude. Yeah, that was you wouldn't believe that's frustration.
Ted, what you been up to today?
Just driving back from 49er practice, and
It's a routine Thursday.
yeah, Thursday's usually a busy day. It's their longest practice. And
Yeah.
do some interviews and just get a lot of that pregame business done. So
I really like the synergy you have with Tim Ryan. You guys seem to have a good thing going there. You don't step on each other, and he really compliments what you do well. I get the feeling that you guys really get along well in the booth.
well, it's nice of you to say that. Yeah, and it's true. I mean, well, first, the biggest thing is that Tim is a broadcaster. I mean, he's a professional.
Yeah.
He knows what's going on. He understands how to do radio, and we do. We like each other, and he's just incredibly passionate, which has been a hard thing to do given the fact that since he's been with us, the team has gone south. So
Yeah, it's tough.
and I had 3 really good years, and then Tim came in the last year Harbaugh, things started to go the other way. So.
That's too bad.
All right.
All right.
You guys ready?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Bruce, who's on the phone?
Now, the former voice of the Golden State Warriors, former Stanford Cardinal play-by-play announcer, did the Giants for a number of years, the New York Mets on radio, and now is the voice of the San Francisco 49ers, who are having a kind of a rough season, and I want to talk with Ted Robinson about the NFL and specifically the 49ers. But, Ted, I got to get your take on last night's, or I should say, as we speak, it was last night, 7th game of the World Series between the Cubs and Cleveland, because you and I and Edward have seen a lot of baseball over the years. I can't remember a game that was fraught with as much drama, as many twists and turns, just a perfect. And then that 17-minute rain delay. I mean, it was almost fitting that the game had to stretch out another 17 minutes. What was your take on the whole thing?
Well, thanks for being or having me with you guys. By the way,
Sure.
Nice to be back with you. And it's funny, Edward, because I was listening to your comments there, and I'm sitting there thinking, who didn't think there was going to be a baseball game on November 2nd?
Yeah, it was kind of tough. We had these tickets like over a month ago, and it's my wife's birthday. So I figured, okay, well, no problem. I'll record the game, and then I'll just watch. Watch it from. I won't listen to anything on the radio or anything until I get there. And yeah, disaster. But anyway, I know who won.
And it was a beautiful night. And the sad part to me, the business part of this that's very sad, is that the game ends at 1 o'clock in the morning in the East Coast. And now baseball, it's beyond my ability to comprehend that baseball doesn't sit down with Fox and just say, listen, this is absurd.
Oh, that's a good
We
point.
can't have the biggest baseball event in last how many years? The Red Sox winning in 04 was clearly the other one.
Yeah.
But this is the biggest single baseball event in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And we're gonna play this game past midnight on the East Coast on a middle of school year, and work.
Yeah.
It's just nobody would inflict that much damage on the only baseball.
Yeah. Well, the game.
Having said that, it was a fabulous game. Look, baseball's changed dramatically, and now all about bullpens and multiple pitchers. But for the Cubs come back from 3-1.
Yeah.
We got used to the word torture around the Giants as a joke. That was the Cubs just went through torture.
That was torture. It's interesting too. I think Joe Madden is the luckiest manager in the world. He was going to be second guessed from here until next spring about using his bullpen, specifically Aroldis Chapman, and bringing Lester when he had Hendricks, who was going so well. Did that kind of surprise you that he maybe sort of overreacted and went to his bullpen and his relief corps that much earlier than we thought?
No, it didn't. Bruce, just again, and I'm detached from baseball now. I'm a fan like everyone, but I've seen it happen. It's clearly, it's interesting. It's an evolution that I think began as a revolution by Tony La Russa, who I worked with when he was the manager of the A's. Tony started the multiple relievers in the 7th and 8th innings because he always had Eckersley for the 9th, but he would do the one batter stuff in the 7th and 8th, and that's been carried now to an extreme. And I'll tell you the moment that I laughed, guys. This was over the weekend, and I forget which game it was in Chicago, but Tomlin, the starting pitcher for Cleveland that night, went 4 1/3 or 4 2/3, and they took him out of the game. He hadn't given up a run.
Yeah.
And Joe Buck and John Smoltz are idolizing this guy. What a great effort! And I'm sitting there thinking, now I have a World Series ring, which I was gifted because of one man, because Jack Morris pitched 10 shutout innings in Game 7 of the 1991 World Series. Still, to me, the single greatest postseason pitching performance in history. Eclipsed for the entire postseason by what Madison Bumgarner did in 2014. But I'm sort of thinking, what is Madison Bumgarner thinking when this guy's getting lauded for pitching 4 2/3 innings as a starter?
Yeah.
That's Joe Buck for you, though.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. But I was thinking that Terry Francona, very fine manager of Cleveland, really rode his bullpen all the way to the end, and you can't fault him for going with the with 3 starters instead of 4 because it worked up until Game 7, and even in Game 7, I mean they managed to get some offense to hold it together. I can't fault him at all. I can't fault Madden, but of course Madden walks out of there the winner, so you can't really fault him, can you? You can have fun those second. That's the great thing about baseball. You can have fun second guessing.
That's what I always wonder. Is like I'd leave unless the guy's hurt. I'd leave him in there until he's showing that he's giving up runs and that you can just.
Or he's losing his command or speed or whatever. But it was obvious, Ted, wasn't it, to you that Chapman just did not have it. He was worn out, and using him in Game 6 just did not make any sense at all with a 5-run lead. Why? I don't get it.
Good point.
I mean, did that surprise you?
I sort of understand the Game 6 thing because there is no. I mean, it's that rare moment in baseball that you never get, which is it's the last. I mean, Game 6 was the last game for the Cubs.
Yeah, but if they're up by 5, if they're up 5-1 though.
I think it was 6-1, wasn't it?
By then, it was 6-1.
6-1.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking. If it was a 2-1 game,
Yeah.
and you think he's going to shut him down, then I understand.
The nice thing is we don't have to talk about that. But from the standpoint of you've lived and worked in the Midwest, you worked in Minneapolis on a couple of stints. You mentioned your time with as the voice of the Twins on radio. What do you think it's like for the folks in Chicago waking up today, realizing once and for all that they can stick out their chest and say, "Hey, we're world champions." My grandfather may not remember it, but I'm going to remember
especially the fans, because guys like Zobrist, he got a ring last year with Kansas City, and it's not like he's played for 25 years.
No. But I mean, you've been around the Midwest a long time. What does it mean to those people?
Well, it's life. I mean, and I can speak a little bit to this recently because I was actually in Chicago 5 days this weekend for a wedding that had been planned a year in advance. So being in Chicago last week, Thursday, Friday, and even Saturday was extraordinary. The vibe, the life in the city was unmatched, and it reminded me a little bit of what San Francisco was like in 2010.
Yeah.
1st October, the first World Series that the Giants win. This was that ramped up probably 2x. Sunday in Chicago was like walking around a citywide week. It was brutal Sunday. They're down 3-1. They won Sunday night. I stayed to Monday. Monday was a little bit better, but it was a normal work day. It still didn't have the vibe. And so to think from that roller coaster ride to come back to where they will now party for the next 3 months it's mind blowing. And look, sports in Chicago, very similar to many other Midwest cities, but I think Chicago probably the most extreme case. It is so ingrained in the DNA of the city. It doesn't matter whether you like baseball or not, you will be caught up in the Cubs winning. And the other point I'll tell you guys is the 5 days I was in Chicago, I did not see a single White Sox merchandise, sign, anything. It's as if they don't exist. At least very similar to what we in the Bay Area see with the A's.
Yeah, that's true.
If they don't exist.
Yeah.
And that's what's mind-blowing to me is they won the World Series 10 years ago and no one even knows it. The Cubs, it's as if Chicago hasn't had this for a century.
It's a great story. The thing that makes it so much fun to me too is that we had this great matchup between two teams. We knew that there was going to be a wonderful story. Conversely, the folks in Cleveland are sitting there thinking, well, here we go again. But I love the team that they have, Ted. I think this team is going to be around for a long time.
And spring training, don't they play each other?
Yeah,
right
well,
away?
I'm sure they do. But I mean, my point is, I think Chicago is going to be very good, but Cleveland looks every bit as good next year coming back.
Yeah, and I think that's something because actually I had a chance to bump into because of this happenstance of being in Chicago. I had a chance to bump into a lot of baseball people I used to know. And I was just, 5 minutes conversations here and there, and I just picked their brain. And one thought about the Cubs that surprised me. I had a couple of executives tell me, they're really young, and they may not be ready for this World Series. And I'm laughing. I'm thinking, I don't think of the Cubs as young.
Yeah, that's right. But again, it's the players themselves. Tell you what, Ted, stay with us. We're going to cut to a quick commercial break here. With the creation of relief pitchers, setup men, and closers, a record of winning 59 games in a season by a pitcher may seem rather far-fetched. Which pitcher did this?
Jeez, I remember hearing about guys winning 40 games. I think Jack Chesbrough won 41 or something.
I'll tell you, this is before the World Series.
Yeah,
the last World Series.
19th century. Yeah, I don't know how much of a historian Ted is.
I think you'll
maybe
at least we'll
figure this one out.
guy.
Okay.
All right, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101.
Okay, Ted, we'll get you out after this next segment.
Okay.
Appreciate it, man.
And you're cutting in and out just a little bit. Is it? Are you going through weird traffic?
Okay. No. Actually, I just walked inside, standing inside my house right now.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. All right.
Actually, let me take my earpiece off here now that we're in a commercial break.
Where do you guys live, Ted?
I live in Atherton.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I'm about to do a deal down there. In the Atherton area.
Real estate deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I do hard money real estate loans.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah.
Plenty of cost there. All right, you guys hear me here now?
Yeah,
that's
sounds
good.
good.
Okay.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. Here we go.
All right.
What do you want to cover next?
I was thinking NFL. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Here was our first trivia question, and we were talking about baseball records. With the creation of relief pitchers, setup men, and closers, a record of 59 wins in a season by a pitcher may seem rather far-fetched. Which pitcher did this? I'll give you the hint, which probably isn't too much of a hint.
No.
1884.
I'm going to say somebody like Cy Young, but I think Cy Young was not
He
pitching.
wasn't, I think he came a little bit later.
Any ideas on that one, Ted? Ted Robinson, I guess.
You did this to me last time. I remember your knowledge is way beyond.
I don't know about that. I've retained a lot of silly items in the brain there.
Charlie Radbourne.
Oh, Old Haas.
There you go. See, I knew you'd know the name.
Old Haas Radbourne.
Very good.
Yeah. I don't know why I remember this stuff. I don't get it.
By the way, from an economic standpoint,
can't remember my social security number. But I can remember that.
Can you imagine Cubs merchandise?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's got to be. I mean, it'll be worldwide, but you know, it's one thing if like Tampa Bay wins it, but Chicago, I mean, it's a major city.
Well, we go from the sublime of Chicago to the depths of despair. The 49ers having a rough year this year, and Ted is the voice of the San Francisco 49ers. And Ted, you know, the Raiders of Oakland have kind of, back in the early part of the 21st century, they went through a very similar period where they were built to win now. They went to 3 conference title games. They went to a Super Bowl. John Gruden was a dynamic young coach, and then they got rid of Gruden. The other players got old and hurt, and the whole thing fell apart, and this is the first year they may make it back to the playoffs. The 49ers are kind of in a similar situation. Hopefully the drought isn't going to last as long, but I mean, Harbaugh leaves, a bunch of players retire or move on. It just seems like all of the bad stuff happened at once for the 49ers. I mean, 3 years ago, this team was one of the best teams in football. Now they're one of the worst. Is that pretty much it in a nutshell?
Yeah, it's an avalanche, Bruce, and you summarized a lot of it. And I think the last element to add is that the pipeline that you hope to have to replace guys, and look, this is football, so there is going to be attrition. Now, the 49ers had more than a team would experience in a short period of time, but that's where you have to have a good organization has a pipeline that provides some relief. And I think that's the last element of the 49ers struggle. The pipeline has been dry. It just hasn't produced enough to replace a huge talent loss. And so now the frustration is that with a new coach this year and an offensive pedigree, things have actually taken a step backwards in the first half of the year, which is, you know, you really didn't think there was much room to go backwards, and they found it. And it's not going to be a quick fix. I don't see any realistic way to look at it as such. And that's the frustration, I think, for every 49er fan.
Is management, what's their take on it? What are they doing?
Well, that's a good question, Edward. That's one that I think Jed York will likely answer at season's end. Jed has been very silent this year, which is really the MO that he's adopted, is that once the football season starts, it's pretty much the head coach, a little bit of Trent Baalke. But I think, look, everyone can see, right? Your eyes tell you what's going on. You can see the empty seats. You can see the lack of enthusiasm. You can hear it now. And if it doesn't get better in the second half of the season, it's going to be very, very compelling for Jed York to have to say, look, I can't continue this way. When you have this stadium you built, people have invested a lot in that stadium. You know, that's the point. Your customers at the 49ers are actually investors.
Well, so
depending on their level of investment, and you have to respond to your investors.
So for the fans who don't know too much about Levi Stadium, it's a new stadium. It's only been around a couple of years.
Relatively speaking. Yeah.
How many? What's the capacity seating?
It's right around 70, somewhere give or take 1,000.
And how many on average do you think the attendance has been?
I was going to say the last game, what did they tell me? There was 50 in the stadium. I think the turnstile count was actually 50. You know, the frustration is that a lot of fans in the wealthy seats, the ones that you see on television, either don't use their tickets or see or watch the game back in their clubs. You know, the very comfortable parts of Levi Stadium. The jolting thing to me in the last home game against Tampa Bay was the upper deck and the end zone seats. And those are the diehard season ticket holders. Those are the people that came from Candlestick, some would come from Kezar, and those seats had some empties. And those are the ones to me that really are alarming. Those are your fans that need to be with you. They're the faithful. And if they start to dissipate, then you have a problem.
Yeah, I was going to say, and also you have a problem. You mentioned Trent Baalke, the general manager, under a lot of fire. some of his draft picks, most of them haven't really turned out very well, and there've been a number of injuries. I mean, is he going to be given a little bit more of a grace period, or do you think this is, you better perform this year, or at least get back to a reasonable respectability, or he's out of there?
Well, I think Bruce, similar answer to what I just gave. I think that's the second half of the season has to be a large part of that. The first half has been very incredibly disappointing because it's not just 1-6, but it's being blown out, being totally incapable of defending at all, stopping the run. I mean, these are 49er defense. They've invested a lot of draft picks in recent years on that defense, and it just has been very, very poor the first half. So they need to see improvement, and I have to think all of that goes into the judgment that York will have to make at season's end about where you go.
Now, one of the things I enjoy about listening to Ted, of course, when I'm covering the Raiders, I'm driving over to Oakland, listening to you usually playing an East Coast game, and you and Tim Ryan have nice synergy on the air. And despite the fact that the team has struggled, you're keeping the game entertaining. And I would think that's the most important and most difficult and challenging thing for a broadcaster is to keep the level of what you're talking about reasonably entertaining and compelling so that people don't turn it off. So if that's a small comfort to you, given what's going on, you deserve a little credit for that. But I imagine that's a challenge. I would think it is.
Bruce, thank you for that. And it is it's the absolute utmost challenge for a team broadcaster in any sport is to keep the broadcast. You have to keep it accurate. You have to keep it informative, but to try to keep it even reasonably entertaining or compelling when your team's bad. That's hard thing to do. And in football, it's very hard because it's only one game a week. Every game has heightened importance. And when things are as bad as it's been for the 49ers this season, and I'm sure you can hear it in my voice, it's very frustrating, and especially to watch the defensive failure just basically be compounded each week.
Ted, I'm just waiting for you to get so frustrated that you say, "Give me a helmet. I'll show them how it's done."
Well, Edward, I'm old, but I'm smarter still than that. It's really, and look, we are in a market here that beautifully, the great broadcasters that have all preceded us. I had the ability to work with a lot of them. They created a standard, a template where you be honest, where you tell the truth, and that's thankfully the 49ers have allowed us to do that. And so the truth hasn't been very pretty this year, but Tim and I think have tried our best. I know we've tried our best to continue to be truthful in our game presentation.
I'm going to ask you about the rest of the league. Any surprises, major surprises to you of what has transpired over the first half of the season in the NFL?
Yeah, Bruce, biggest surprise to me is Arizona. I had them as the NFC Super Bowl team. I thought this was their year. Still might be, but they're really going to have to climb uphill the second half. Now, we saw Seattle do that a couple of years ago, so it's possible. But that's been, to me, the absolute single biggest disappointment. And I have to believe, at least NFC-wise, Dallas is the biggest surprise. I mean, to have Romo down, to have a rookie quarterback that they didn't even want, step in and play as well as he has, with a rookie running back play as well as he has, that's, to me, clearly the most surprising part. And I would say the second biggest surprise to me is that Goff hasn't played a game. I would have thought Goff would have played by now for the Rams.
Jared Goff of University of California, yeah.
Well, do you think my Vikings are going to make it?
Well, that was a real jolt yesterday with North Turner stepping down as the offensive coordinator. That one caught all of us by surprise. And I'll tell you, my first reaction was, my gosh, I hope the 49ers get on the phone with him.
Yeah.
Turner would be a great, of course, I have no idea why he walked away, but if he's willing to coach next year, I would hope that Chip Kelly or 49ers would call him. Because North Turner, with his NFL experience and pedigree, would be an incredible resource for whoever is going to be the quarterback going forward.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that just seemed to be more suited to be a top coordinator, always very good in Dallas. But when he had his stints at the top, it just wasn't happening for him. And I guess there are a number of guys like that. Dennis Allen, for instance, was terrible as the head coach of the Raiders, but has been a very good defensive coordinator. So it is interesting.
Yeah, I'm still reeling.
History's littered with those kinds of guys. Bruce, you're exactly right. Buddy Ryan on the defensive side, the same way. But again, look at what North Turner did with Bradford, right? Bridgewater goes down, and look what's happened for the Vikings. So that's why this is an incredibly puzzling. And I'm sure inside the NFL they probably have some idea why it happened, but for all of us on the outside, we're immediately going, what the heck's that about?
Yeah, I'm still reeling from Super Bowl IV. Wasn't that Kansas City beating the Vikings?
Beating Joe Cap.
Yeah.
And Joe Cap is still reeling about that. Talk to him. You ever talk to Joe Cap, Ted? He's a character.
Well, it's funny. I saw Joe Cap here last November. It was really amazing you mentioned that. I was involved in a function in San Francisco, big game week. I had to write a piece and then introduce on stage Joe Cap and John Brody together.
Oh, wow.
And it was phenomenal because we know John has had major health problems, but he's up to the point where he can walk a little bit and talk just a little bit. And Joe Cap was just wonderful, and they were so happy to be honored. So it's great to see Joe Cap. But Edward, I got to tell you, having been in Minnesota for 8 years and having been through a World Series win by the Twins,
Yep.
I'm the first one to tell you that no Twins parade, the two they've had, nothing would match the parade someday.
Oh yeah, for the Vikings, sure.
I know that. I know how much Minnesota loves football and how much they love the Vikings. When that day happens, it's going to be cup-like.
Oh yeah. Well, listen, I was very happy when they beat Atlanta.
Kinda like-
when the Twins did. In fact, that was
1991.
Yeah, that was the first time.
Great World
No,
Series.
actually, it was '87 where you had the home team winning all the games.
When they beat St. Louis.
Yeah. Tell you what, we got to cut to a quick commercial break here.
Ted's got to get going, though.
Yeah.
But we want to thank him very much. Ted, we'll talk to you soon, and appreciate you being aboard with us today.
Thank you, Ted.
Well, guys, please ask me anytime. Nice to be with you.
Absolutely.
We will. Ted's a great guy. You know, as I mentioned at the beginning, Ted had done all these teams, Warriors and Mets and Giants, and we forgot about the Twins, who won the championship in 1991. He was the voice of the Twins.
87, but he was in '91. Okay.
Yeah.
How does a pitcher lose 48 games in a season?
Yep.
In the first half of the century, nobody lost even 30 games, and between 1950 and 2000, no pitcher lost 25. This record of 48 appears outrageously untouchable, and was set in 1883 by which pitcher?
Boy.
Don't touch it. Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101. I'll be right back. We went way over on that one. But
Oh, that's all right. So we just have a few minutes to go?
Well, we have our 13. We have our long.
Oh, long
segment
time,
now,
okay.
yeah, and then we'll.
No problem.
He's great.
Yeah, Ted's a good guy. Ted's one of those guys who's been touched by good fortune.
Okay.
He got his big break was he got KCBS hired him to do sports updates in a talk show once in a while, back in 82. Then the Warriors, all of a sudden, Bill King left to go full-time with the A's, and KCBS was carrying the games, and they didn't have anybody to do the games.
Wow.
And he just happened to be right there. So that was a huge break. So we did 2 years of that. And then things just, you have to have some luck in life, in our profession.
But to be able to do baseball, basketball, and football.
Yeah. No, he's done very well for himself.
What would you like to cover?
We can just go kind of bounce around a little bit. I was thinking a little NFL. I'd love to talk about the Raiders. I think that's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Ted was great.
Yeah.
Love having him on. We're going to have him on
Definitely.
more often.
Yeah.
All right. We're talking about baseball records. How does a pitcher lose 48 games in a season? I mean, nowadays, you can't even get really 48
I
starts,
have
can you?
no idea. How could you do that?
So in the first half of the century, nobody lost even 30 games in a season. And between 1950 and 2000, no pitcher lost 25 in a season. This record of 48 seems outrageously untouchable and was set in 1883. Now that makes sense. That it would have to be way back then, right?
Yeah.
By which pitcher?
Obviously somebody who wasn't in the Hall of Fame. But then again, if you lose that many games, you must have been pretty good. Otherwise, you would have been trotted out there so many times. So.
That's a good
I don't know.
Well, that's like Whitey Ford lost a whole bunch of games, right?
Well, yeah, but in the World Series, Whitey Ford was amazing. He was, there's some guys that just pitched well when the game was on the line. A lot of money
But he
was
lost
on
a
the line.
lot too. Or Babe Ruth, he strikes out a lot, but he hit a lot.
Yeah.
So a guy named John Coleman. You don't know that name?
No.
The Philadelphia Quakers.
Philadelphia Quakers.
Which turned into the Philadelphia Phillies.
Oh,
I
my
thought that
goodness.
was kind of a fun one. Actually,
Yeah.
the next question is going to be after the 1800s, so
Oh, okay.
you'll get that one.
Okay. I go back a ways, but
Not
you know,
that far.
yeah, not that far. Yeah.
But you know some of your old baseball.
Yeah, I don't know why it stuck with me. It's weird. I can remember the 1962 lineup of the San Francisco Giants, who batted second, who hit 259 in the World Series. But as I said, I can't even remember my driver's license number, for crying out loud. So go figure. I can't remember what I wrote down. I'm going to pick up at the store for my wife. For dinner.
That's why you got to write it
But
down.
I can remember who pitched the fifth game of the World Series in 1964.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because nowadays you got a lot more on your plate, a lot more responsibility.
Yeah.
Back in 1964, you were a young man.
Well, and those games meant more. When you're a kid, sports means a lot more. I have to tell you, I was listening, and it's weird. Sometimes when I have a hard time sleeping, if you ever have a tough night sleeping, and one of the best, I would tell our listeners this: if you ever have a insomnia problem, one way to put yourself to sleep is to go through lists of things that you remember. And what I like to do is remember World Series winners from 1946, actually 45 all the way through the present day. And I always, just whip through them when I get through the 60s and the 70s. 80s, it slows down a little bit. Even though I was covering those teams, 90s slows down a little bit more. By the time I get to the 2000s, I'm going, wait a second. I get it, but it takes a while.
See, 2000 was the Subway Series, all right?
2000 was the Mets and Yankees.
Yeah.
2001 was Arizona
beating
the, and of course 2002 we don't need to talk about the Giants losing to the Angels. But no, I mean it is interesting how we remember these things. And I was thinking of the teams that I got to cover, the championships that meant the most. One of which was the 1976 Oakland Raiders when they won their first title. They won 15 games and lost one that year.
That's when they beat the Vikings.
They beat the Vikings. Beat them convincing. No. This was Ken Stabler. This was before Plunkett.
That's right.
But now the Raiders, speaking of today and they here in the present, the Raiders are finally relevant again. They've got a great offense. They've got a quarterback who is quick on his feet. He's enthusiastic. He rarely gets sacked. His offensive line keeps him out of trouble. They've got a terrific duo of receivers in Amari Cooper, who's a speedster, kid out of the Southeastern Conference. And of course, you have to say Michael Crabtree. They like to call him the Claw because he just got such great hands. They're a fun team to watch. They may not go very far in the postseason because their defense is kind of struggling, but they have a cult following nationally, and the Raiders are finally relevant again. And you got to give them some credit. They're not a fluke. I mean, they're a very good team.
So who else are we looking at in the American League?
Well, in the Western Conference of the AFC West, I think is maybe the toughest conference because Kansas City is very good, and Denver is the defending champion. And Denver's defense is extremely good. As we speak, the Raiders are getting ready to play a nationally televised game at home against Denver. This is a huge game for the Raiders, who have not been able to win a big game in a long, long time. So this is one of those games. And then there's a lot of intrigue behind the scenes about the possibility of moving to Las Vegas. So the Raiders always seem to have controversy and, things going on off the field. It's just a fascinating story going back to the early days of the AFL when Al Davis took over this moribund franchise. And they've had their highs and lows, but right now they are definitely in an upward trend. And I would be shocked if they don't make the playoffs unless they get hit with just an inordinate number of injuries. They're a good team.
Still got New England.
New England looks to be as good as ever, and I think part of that, Edward, is the culture of winning. You have that much experience of being successful, and you walk out on the field and you know you're going to win. John Madden used to talk about it. He said, I used to know when we'd get into a late game and it was close, I'd know we were going to win. The players knew it, and the fans knew it, and we'd look across the field, and the other team knew it. And that's
the edge.
Well, and that's how many times have the Patriots been to the Super Bowl since the year 2001? I think they've been on something like 9 times, and they've won 4 of them. Maybe it's only 8 times, and they've won 4. But
they lost to the Giants twice.
They lost to the Giants twice. They lost to they beat the Rams. They beat Philadelphia. They beat Carolina, and of course they beat Seattle. I'm trying to think who else they might have lost to. They lost twice to the Giants, and then there were a couple of other ones. But I mean, Tom Brady can, put his own stamp on his legacy because no quarterback has won 5 Super Bowls. Joe Montana won 4. Brady's won 4. But this, at the age of 39, I think unless something terrible happens to that team, I pick him to go all the way.
Who would you? I know it's kind of hard to make the comparison. And Al Adels, if he was here, he says. You don't like to make comparisons.
Yeah, right.
That's basketball. But who would you take, Montana or Brady?
I would have to take Brady only because of longevity. But in a big game situation, Montana's right up there. I mean, Montana always came through. And Montana was surrounded, like Brady, with some great coaches and great players. I mean, you're only as great as what's around you. Tom Flores, the great coach of the Raiders who took them to 2 Super Bowls, used to say, you surround a player with dogs, he's going to play like a dog.
Well, that's the thing is you got to give that front line a tremendous tremendous amount
Yeah.
of credit.
Well,
It's not just the wide receivers.
Again, I mean, we never talk about the offensive line. They're the smartest guys. They're the toughest guys. They get beat up the most. But if you don't have a good offensive line, you're not going to win. It's plain and simple. The game is won in the trenches in football, and offensive linemen are very, if you can get a couple of good guys to anchor the middle, a center and a left tackle, and then the other guys are okay, you've got something in the making there for maybe a couple of years.
Yeah, because on the outside, they just kind of back up and kind of make that little curve.
That little pocket, yeah. Left tackles are not easy to come by, though. And here's the thing about offensive linemen. Usually, with rare exception, I think Orlando Pace might have been an exception, they don't come out of college and suddenly become stars. It takes a couple of years because of the blocking schemes and the way the game is set up. And the other, the skill positions, running back, wide receiver, quarterback, maybe less degree quarterback, but wide receivers and running backs can suddenly just get right into the flow of things. But offensive linemen, tougher situation.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Orlando Pace because if I remember correctly, he came out of Ohio State, went right to the Rams.
Yeah.
And that's one of the few things. Like, how many times do you remember a guy in college and in the pros, and especially in that position? And I remember, I think he was a number one pick.
I think actually, wasn't he Ohio State? And Jonathan Ogden is the guy from UCLA, or is it the other way around?
No, Pace came from Ohio State.
Did he? Okay, then Ogden was from UCLA. Yeah. Ogden was another guy, came out and played with the Ravens and just stepped right in and was, some of these guys, they're just really intelligent. When you're dealing with professional defensive linemen, though, and linebackers on the pro level, the difference between that and college is just, it's light years apart. And so I think that's the toughest part for offensive linemen, to get used to the quickness and the different looks and, just the veteran moves that some of these guys have that they've never seen, ever.
What would you say Orlando Pace's professional career? I mean, would you say it was stellar?
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, because I remember him playing well, but I guess because he's offensive line, which is sort of this exciting. It's hard. I mean, look at that block.
Well, yeah, it made a difference. I mean, now Art Shell and Gene Upshaw anchored the left side of the Raider line for something like 12 years, and without them, Ken Stabler and Jim Plunkett wouldn't have had the success that they had. So you have to have that. Jim Otto, of course, the great Hall of Fame center, 15 years, played every single game, every single offensive down, and that guy's paying a terrible price for it. His mind is still sharp, but his body has just been so beat up. I would not urge any kid to get into football unless they really know the price that they may have to pay, because what is happening today, I think, is even tougher on the athletes because they're bigger, stronger, faster, and the joints aren't getting any bigger, and the heads aren't getting any bigger, but the bodies and the speed in which they're hitting each other is a lot more terrific, and so there's a lot more...
It's all become place kickers.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, look at Sebastian Janikowski, 39 years old, still doing his thing. So there you go.
Did Morton Anderson finally retire?
He did. I think he was 42 or 43, and he's not in the Hall of Fame, which...
Really?
No, and I think probably part of that is due to the fact that he didn't play in the Super Bowl. I don't believe he did. I'm trying to remember.
Well, no, did he play with the Saints when they won?
No, I don't think so. I think he was gone by then. But
yeah, but that's not his. I mean, it's one thing.
Well, you have to be. The thing is, if you get into the Hall of Fame, part of the reason you get in is because you played in some big games. I hate to say that.
Yeah,
it's
but I mean, he was so accurate for so many years.
I know, but there's always been sort of a built-in prejudice against kickers and punters until recently. Ray Guy got in, finally got in, and I'm trying to think. There is a kicker. I mean, Luke Groza, I believe, is in.
And Jan Stenerud, I mean, he blew a few big games.
Yeah, but he won a lot more than he blew. So it's the problem is it's the perception. It's a guy comes in, he's only playing 10 or 12 plays a game, but the pressure is on. I mean, that's
but again, you got to compare it to. It's a comparison thing. The Hall of Fame is a comparison between you. Are you the best at your position?
Sure.
The guy's really accurate. I mean, Morton Anderson was extremely accurate.
I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, there are certain players.
Maybe he hasn't been out for 5 years yet.
No, he's been out for more than 10. Yeah. I know it's going by fast.
I guess I am getting old.
Well, it's just like me. You're forgetting 2016, and you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, "Who is that old guy?"
George Blanda's still kicking, isn't he?
I remember vividly George Blanda had this string of 5 weeks in a row where he came off the bench, either quarterbacked or kicked his team to wins in the final seconds in 1970. And he was 43 years old at the time. And the middle game was played in Denver, and he came in for an ineffective Darryl LaMonica. The Broncos were not very good that year, and I was sitting in the booth. I was going to school at the University of Denver my freshman year, so Bill King, the Raider announcer, was nice enough to give me a booth pass, and I did some stats. And it took him 6 plays to drive the team 80 yards for a touchdown and a win.
I used to love Darryl LaMonica. My dad never cared for him, but I said,
well, they benched him that day, and George came in and had his magic going. And I remember Bill King said, the man who has extracted the coals from the conflagration is none other than George Blanda.
Conflagration?
Yeah. And whoever coined the phrase "the perils of Blanda" didn't really know what he was coining. He was only scratching the surface. And, it's funny because that 5-week period really put Blanda on the map. He'd always been a sort of a semi-known player because he'd been around forever. He was 43 years old.
Yeah.
But he played
with the
Houston Oilers, but he played for 5 more years. He played with the Chicago Bears. George Halas did not like him. A lot of resentment there between him and George Halas. But he played until he was 48 years old. And that particular 5-week stretch it got a lot of play on Monday Night Football. Howard Cosell talked about it every week during that stretch. They had the highlights.
What's Blanda gonna do tonight?
Yeah, what is he gonna do? The old man, there you see, the 48-yard field. And that got him in the Hall of Fame. That was the week that kind of put him over the top.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Sometimes these guys stick around so long that they start to go downhill so fast, and then you kind of really start second-guessing whether they really belonged in there, and that's kind of sad.
Well, George actually came in a game when he was age of 48 and threw 1 pass in 1 game, a Sunday night game against Dallas, touchdown.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, here's our last trivia question. Talking about baseball records. The Yankees went to 14 World Series in 16 years from 1949 to 1964. Casey Stengel was one of 2 managers in this span. Who was the other?
It's
I figured you'll know that one.
Yeah.
I figured the other 2 were hard, so I think, from the 1800s. I had to do this one.
There you go.
All right, don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 will be right back.
All right.
A little segment.
Oh, God.
I forgot my thoughts for the day. I'll have to quickly look those up.
You can do what I sometimes call the Bolinas Wave Report, and they had this guy doing this bad poetry. It's like tinkles of spray coming out of the air to titillate our senses. A bird caws in the distance. It's a sad afternoon. One lonely surfer floating on the undulating.
Undulating.
Yeah, it's like what are you saying? Is it good? Is it bad? What is going on?
It's like that Bill King thing. It's kind of hard to understand.
Oh God, he was funny. I remember when Warren Wells beat the Jets, on a freak play with 1 second to go. He was like, this is ridiculous. This is utterly ridiculous. The Raiders have a chance to win it. If a hack pulp fiction writer or a demented script writer tried to conjure up the kind of finishes the Raiders have produced this year, they would send him to the loony bin before he ever got past the first proofreader. The game has ended. My script says it hasn't ended, but it has, and the Raiders win this game.
So funny.
He was great. I love Bill King. What I loved about Bill King? He died 7 days after his last game, and he was still doing a pretty good job. Yeah, he went in for a routine operation, had an embolism, and died. 78 years old. It was such a shock. Yeah.
All right, I'll use these thoughts.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Just have 2 minutes to go.
Okay.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Here was our 3rd and final trivia question. We had to give a softball one because Bruce was kind of getting a little nervous. The Yankees went to 14 World Series and 16 games from 1949 to 1964. Casey Stengel was only one of 2 managers in that span. Who was the other?
The other one was Ralph Houck, the Major.
Oh.
Took over in 1961.
Is that what they called him, the Major?
The Major. Well, he was a Major in the Army and the U.S. Army during World War II, and I believe he took part in the Battle of the Bulge, which was one of the most vicious battles. That was the one where the Germans sort of surprised the American forces with a counterattack that, for a while, really the battle was up in the air. But then the skies cleared, and our Air Force came in and just bombed the you-know-what out of the Germans, and that was it. Decimated them.
All right, here's our thoughts for the day. In 1910, football teams were penalized 15 yards for an incomplete forward pass.
Really?
Yeah, that
Wow.
was it.
Interesting.
Make you, well, actually, back then they hardly threw the ball.
No,
They
didn't throw the ball very much at all. Yeah.
And from a complete stop, a human is capable of outrunning a Formula One race car for about 30 feet.
Wow.
Which surprises me.
Yeah.
I mean, 30 feet's not that much, but you think, hit the gas and there
Sure
you
is.
be.
Yeah, that's surprising.
All right, we have 30 seconds before we have to tune out here.
Yes, I'm looking forward to watching the Warriors. We'll talk more about them next week. The Golden State Warriors, NBA champions 2 years ago, should have won last year, but LeBron had other ideas, and Kevin Durant is looking amazing thus
Good.
far. Yeah.
And I heard LeBron is not good luck for the Indians. Every time he goes to the game, they lose.
Well, they almost
might ban him.
almost pulled it out. They blew a 3-1 lead after the
Yep.
Cavs won, coming from behind 3-1.
All right, tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. Well, we'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
So long.
All right.
All right, that was fun.
That was fun.
How's Colette doing?
She's doing good. She went back to work, wanted to go back to work, and